You know, we hear about political fights in Washington, D.C. all the time, right? And honestly, most of it can feel pretty disconnected from our day-to-day lives. But today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a high-stakes tug of war that's happening right now and show you how it's directly shaping your wallet, your mortgage, and your financial future. And it all kicks off with a number that a lot of you might be feeling in a very real way.
Yeah, that's a big one, 6.5%. That's the new 6-month high for a 30-year mortgage. Now, if you're trying to buy a house or you're even just watching the market, you know that's a painful jump. It's the kind of number that makes that dream home feel just a little bit farther out of reach, almost overnight. So what in the world is going on? Well, according to Lawrence Yun, he's the chief economist over at the National Association of Realtors, the connection is actually pretty simple. When oil prices go up, it stokes fears of inflation, and that in turn pushes mortgage rates higher. It's a chain reaction. And as he pointed out, the timing for this is just terrible, hitting right when the housing market was expecting a surge of buyers. But here's where it gets really interesting. These economic pressures, they aren't just happening in a vacuum. Nope. Behind those headlines about rates and prices, there is a fierce, multi-front battle being fought in Washington. We're seeing these completely different ideas about how the economy should be run clash, and it's all happening at the exact same time.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the fight for control at the Federal Reserve. Then, we'll dive into the wild, contradictory battles that are rewriting the housing rulebook. After that, we'll cover the struggle for survival of our nation's consumer watchdog. And finally, we'll connect all the dots and show you exactly why this tug of war really matters.
All right, first up, the Fed. This is the place that basically controls the cost of money in the U.S. And right now, it is ground zero for a massive political standoff.
Okay, check out how this is played out. Back in January, President Trump nominated Kevin Warsh to take over as Fed chair. But the whole confirmation process has been completely frozen. Why? Because of a Department of Justice investigation into the current chair, Jerome Powell, over some remarks he made. Now, Powell has suggested this investigation is really just a political tactic to pressure him because the Fed hasn't been lowering interest rates like the president wanted. So the result is this weird stalemate, with Powell saying he'll just stay on the job even after his term officially ends in May. And with this statement, Chairman Powell is basically drawing a line in the sand. He's making it crystal clear that he's not going to be pushed around by political pressure. He's determined to see this thing through to the very end. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so it's a fight over a job, what's the big deal? Well, it is a huge deal. This is really a battle over the soul of the Fed. Who gets to control interest rates? Should it be an independent group focused only on the economy, or should politics get to call the shots? The fact that even key Republicans like Senator Thom Tillis are helping to block the nomination shows you just how high the stakes really are. Okay, let's pivot now to housing, because this is where that tug-of-war theme becomes incredibly clear. We've got two huge policy fights going on at the very same time, but they are pulling in completely opposite directions. So on one side, you have 15 states plus Washington, D.C., suing the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. They're arguing that a new rule seriously weakens protections against discrimination. But then, at the same time, another agency, the Federal Housing Finance Agency, is doing the complete opposite. It's actually loosening insurance rules to try and lower cost for homeowners. So one side is pulling for tighter regulation, and the other is pulling for less. California's Attorney General Rob Bonta really captured the feeling of those suing HUD. From their perspective, this isn't about paperwork or red tape. It's about protecting fundamental rights and making sure the progress we've made on fair housing doesn't get erased. But on the other end of the rope, you have folks like Senator Eric Schmidt who argue that easing these rules, like letting people get different kinds of roof insurance, isn't about weakening standards at all. To them, it's about giving families more choices and the flexibility to lower their bills, which can be a game changer, especially in rural areas. And that brings us to our third and final battleground. And this is a fight for the very survival of the agency that was created to protect you. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB. So for years, the Trump administration has been trying to shut down the CFPB. Their latest strategy was basically to starve it of cash. The administration argued the agency had no legal way to get money, and so the acting director just refused to ask for any. But then, a federal judge stepped in and shut that down, calling the refusal illegal and ordering the administration to request the funding the CFPB needs to keep its doors open. And let me tell you, this was not just some minor legal defeat. This was a major roadblock. The court's ruling essentially threw a lifeline to the consumer watchdog, stopping the effort to dismantle it from the inside, at least for now.
Okay, so we've looked at 3 different battles, one at the Fed, one in housing, and one over the CFPB. Let's tie it all together and answer the biggest question of all. Why should you care about any of this Washington infighting?
At the end of the day, each one of these fights is about something that hits close to home. The battle at the Fed, that's about how much you're going to pay for a mortgage or a car loan. The fight over housing, that's a classic showdown between protecting civil rights and the push to lower costs. And the battle over the CFPB, that's a debate over whether we should even have a federal watchdog protecting consumers from shady financial practices. See, these are not abstract debates happening in some far-off bubble. The outcomes of these power struggles literally write the rules of the game for your financial life. They decide the interest rate on your credit card, your ability to fight back against housing discrimination, and whether there's a cop on the beat watching out for you when you deal with big banks. And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty important question to think about. In this constant, high-stakes tug of war between all these competing ideas and powerful interests, who exactly is pulling for you?